All right, I want to start with the Nationals, Dan, and they're 3-1 on their current 10-game road trip. How big a barometer is this trip for the team right now?
I mean, I think it's obviously we're talking now about them being a contender because of the way they handled the Giants. I mean, I think it was more a couple days ago you were thinking they need to make sure they don't fall back here. They've kind of just gotten their heads above water again. They need to make sure that this doesn't turn into a disaster. But now I think suddenly, the way they played in San Diego, where they really could have swept the series, and the way they played in Game 1 against San Francisco, now you're thinking just exactly what Kilgore wrote in the paper today, that this could be a way for them to establish, hey, we are one of the teams to be in the National League again. I don't know that any road trip in June ever matters really that much, but certainly for the optics, they're looking again like the team that we thought they were going to be. And their numbers, their runs scored versus runs against, I think would indicate that they should be even a little bit better in the standings than they are, which is sort of a long-term barometer of how good a team is. So things are definitely looking up right now.
Keith, Dan mentioned it. They're tied for first in the NL East with Atlanta, 33-29, 8-2 over the last 10. And what Adam wrote in his game story today is the Nationals used the first leg of their 4-game showdown with the Giants to declare their status as a full-fledged contender. Do you agree?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to go against Kilgore on baseball,
Right.
But at the same time, I don't know, as Dan said, if any trip in June is a huge barometer. I think you're right. It's probably better that they. I think the interesting thing is that they've weathered the storm of injuries. They're now starting to get everybody back in the lineup. The pitching's starting to look like we thought it might look, and they're still tied for first place with the Marlins and the Braves. So I think from that standpoint, if they continue to play well and they start to either pull away a little bit, they still have Bryce Harper on the shelf, and if he comes back and if he plays well when he's back, then I think further down the line, July, August, early September, we start thinking about them as a contender.
LeVar, one of the reasons that this sort of series, I think, and this road trip against the Cardinals and the Giants, two of the best teams in the National League, was highlighted is because the Nationals have struggled against the best teams going back a couple of years now. 10-17 this year against teams going into last night's game with winning records. So do you see this 10-game stretch as a real barometer for them going forward this year?
A real barometer, of course. If you're winning, you're winning. If you're losing, you're losing. So you're supposed to win games against teams that you're supposed to win against, and they have beat some pretty good teams here as of late. Again, I think it's better to be talking about them. Should we think they're better than what they are because they're winning, rather than the other. They're losing. So what does that mean? I ultimately think that you got to take a look at what they're able to do once they come back around with the Atlanta Braves, because they have struggled with the Braves, and I think that's more of the barometer of if this team truly has transitioned. But if they continue to win, you got to take it at the face value of information that you're receiving, is that they're winning. And also I think that it should also be looked at as the Marlins. It may be difficult to see that team with the way that they're configured to be able to maintain the success that they're having. They're a surprise team right now in the East, so I don't foresee them being able to maintain the level of accomplishment going deeper into the season. So you're talking about really this could potentially turn into a 2-team run. So I want to see what they do against a team like Atlanta before I can really kind of give it the green light.
And next weekend, when they come back home from this West Coast trip, they have a 4-game set against Atlanta Nationals.
No, I think that's a fair point. To me, the most encouraging thing about all this, as dominant as the pitching has been, and the pitching has been almost historically dominant over the last week. One of the best stretches in franchise history. But to me, the more encouraging thing is really the bats. I think they've scored 6 runs 5 out of their last 7 games, 7 out of their last 11 games. I know that because every time they score 6 runs, you can get free chicken McNuggets. But if they're going to hit like that, it takes so much pressure off the pitching. And the pitching has been good most of the season, really. I mean, the pitching has not been the problem, but the offense was just anemic for so long. Now, if they're going to hit like this, Span has been absolutely on fire. Desmond's hitting well. Yep. Zimmerman just back hasn't really caught fire yet, but
that's the thing. Yeah.
Huge bat in the lineup, and still Bryce Harper, arguably your most dangerous bat, not even in there. If they're going to hit like this, it totally transforms the season.
And you mentioned the pitching, historically. I mean, just to throw it out there, 51 strikeouts and 1 walk from the starters over the last 7 games.
I mean,
it's just
absurd.
It's absurd. It's like you have to say, wait a minute, that has to be a typo. Strasburg 3-0 with 3 earned runs and 27 strikeouts over his last 3 starts. Zimmerman 2-0 with 3 earned runs and 19 strikeouts. Player of the Week in the National League last week. Fister's 3-0 with 5 earned runs and 15 strikeouts, 4-1 overall. I mean, these guys are finally coming in. Gio's the only one who's not sort of living up to what the hype was, but with a healthy.
You got slammed in Potomac at Class A the other day on a rehab start. You know, I mean, I think one key point here, though, is you're never as bad as you look when you're at your worst, and you're never as good as you look at your best. And they've got to make sure that this doesn't turn into like mediocre play again.
Way to bring us back down to earth on that, Dan. Thanks.